How y'all doing this evening? I would like to officially welcome you to the very first installment of Sitting with DJ Lob-EZ. Let's see. I'm not DJ Lob-EZ. I'm actually his cousin, Donnie Lee. So he asked me to. He gave me a call and asked me to sit in for him this evening because he's a real busy man. Because he is a high school AP European history teacher, and he's got like grading papers and stuff to do, and like reading and stuff like that. So, since I'm kind of familiar with this topic, he asked me to fill in, and I did so last year on several occasions. And our other cousin will sometimes fill in, and his name is Donaldo Tello, and he's from Italy. And so and then we got another cousin, but he's from Germany. He gonna join us sometimes, but I don't know. He's having a little trouble at the border right now, like with his visa status. So I don't know. He might, but we're gonna see. All right. Anyway, if you haven't already done so, might as well call him Doctor because he knows so much. You might as well call him Dr. Lob-EZ. Dr. Lob-EZ wants to make sure that you, what you call, like there on YouTube, subscribe, because we try to get rich off of Coke Zero. See, we drink a lot of Coke Zero, and so we want to be advertising for them, and so this is where they show us the money. Anyway, the way this lesson is going to go, we're going to talk about the bubonic plague, aka Black Death. All right. In class, we already went through some of the precursors or the prelude to the disaster, as it were. But what you see here are some of the major concepts that are going to be outlined, not just in this lesson, but in the other lessons of chapter 1. For all those of you who aren't students of Dr. Lob-EZ, his lectures tend to follow the AP European book that is authored by a feller by the name of McKay. So just throwing that out there if there's other listeners or watchers. So what we's fixing to get into is the bubonic plague, but that's right there, right on my chin, right where the little ice age begins or ends. Anyway, talked a little bit in class about the effect that the little ice age had, causing a great famine to strike in the early 14th century. Thus weakening the population and making them more susceptible to the coming disease of the bubonic plague, especially the bookends, as Dr. Lob-EZ says. That would be the young and the very old, most vulnerable to disease. So or to famine, actually. So as I said, this was already discussed in class, so we're not going to spend too much time talking about like that. Look at that. Look at y'all. They all taking a bath. I guess that's one of the medieval saunas or something. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with that. But anyway, we're going to move on. All right. So keep calm and avoid the Black Death. Well, truer words have never been uttered. Anyway, so we're going to discuss the Black Death, all right? And so a lot of it has to do with the fact that transportation and trade had increased since the Crusades reintroduced commerce between Europe and Asia. And it was the Genoese, which was an Italian city-state that was most responsible, they think, for bringing unknowingly bringing the bubonic plague to Italy. Well, actually, it was Sicily, then Italy, then the rest of Europe. All right, 1347. So that's kind of a real important date that y'all need to remember. So this disease known as the bubonic plague, or later, after the disease had been had gone away, they named it the Black Death. But this is a disease that is carried by rats, y'all, okay, or rodents, things like that, and they have a tendency to have fleas, all right, because they're filthy vermin, and those fleas, after the rats die, they drink the blood, obviously. I don't have to tell you all that. You know, it ain't that complicated, but eventually the humans become the hosts, all right, and the diseases transfer that way. I'm not going to get too much into details of different kinds of disease. There was bubonic, and then there was pneumonic, and then septicemic. That had to do within your blood. The pneumonic had to do that it was airborne in your lungs, but all of them was about equally deadly, all right? And doctors at the time, and well, really nobody had any idea what caused it. But there is some debate as to whether or not, because of just how deadly this disease was, that it could have been something else. But they're pretty sure it was, because they got a way of telling. Because if they get some of them skeletons, because there was a lot of mass graves, they can get at their teeth, and inside their teeth they got what's called pulp, and they draw some of that pulp up and they put it under a microscope, and then they can see that's that bacteria, bubonic plague. All right, so anyway, why? Most important factoid that you need to all know about the bubonic plague is that it killed 1/3 of the population of Europe. Okay, that roughly translates to about 25 million. All right, so if you're real good at your arithmetic, you can then surmise that the population of Europe once stood at 75 million. Okay, so why was this disease so deadly? Well, because this was the first time they had been exposed to it, so they had no antibodies to fight off the deadly infection, but also because they were in such a weakened state, remember, from the little ice age, okay? And, yeah, just people weren't too terribly healthy back then, so what you want from me? I don't know. But, yeah, we're going to get into the lack of sanitation and their dreadful case of, or their dreadful hygiene. All right, so the disease followed a pretty similar course. We're going to talk about bubonic plague, but there was this, I guess one of the early stages is that the appearance of what they call, oh, look at that. That's Bubba. That's the same name as my cousin. I got a cousin, Bubba. Oh, wait a minute. That's Boobo. Oh. Anyway, sorry. I got a little distracted. Yeah, you get the, see what this doctor's doing right here? See, he's fishing around in this here fella's, bubos, okay? So what that is that's a swelling near one of the lymphatic, glands that you got. You got some on your inner thighs, you got some around your neck, and then you got some under your arms. And these things would fill up with what you call pus. And what the doctor would do was lance it, and all that nasty pus would get out, which was just riddled with the disease. But if you got some of that nastiness out your body, you actually had a chance to survive. So that was actually one of the few things that the doctors could do to make sure that could help the patient. But those bubos, their appearance was like telltale sign that you got the disease. All right, look at that fella. He got a mess on his hand. Looked like 4th of July. He had closed his hand around a M80 or some stuff. I don't know. But anyway, he's got that's called necrosis, necrotic. Them fingernails and them fingers got to go because they dead. they got gangrene. If you leave them on there, they're gonna rot. Anyway, see, this don't make no sense. They say in the text that this ain't the reason why they call it Black Death. Well, you could have fooled me, because that feller's fingers are nasty. And if it's me, I'm calling that thing Black Death. If I see someone's hands like that, I'm going to say, you got Black Death. So anyway, that was another like later stage once they got them fingers look like they're going to fall off. And then finally, they just start falling out, passing out. They're delirious with fever, and they coughing up blood. And so that means their internal organs have begun to liquefy. That's not a good sign, and that death would soon follow. So the good news, I guess, was the fact that the disease ran its course rather quickly. So we talking start to finish, probably, 2-week time period, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, one important thing that y'all need to know is how in the heck this disease get there? Well, it came from China, see? And so like I said, it was because of those Genoese. There's that them traders, the merchants were sailing around, and they's here in the Black Sea, all right? And well, down here, they're pretty sure it was the Crimean coast. There was this little city called Kaffa, but they ain't for sure. But anyway, trade had been, I guess, restored, the Silk Road or something like that, because of the Mongols. All right, and I always thought that the Mongols were just like evil people that killed everybody, but I guess one of the benefits was that they took over so much territory that there was finally enough peace and stability that the commerce along the Silk Road could resume, and so trade picked up between the east and the west. But anyway, what they think happened was the Mongols had, I guess, traveled across Asia, the steppes of Asia, and they reached the Black Sea region, and they began laying siege in 1346 against this city called Kaffa. And it was a walled city, and so one of the things that they did to try to get after the Kaffaites was to take some of them dead bodies. Now, they didn't really understand too much about the disease, but they figured, well, hey, maybe it'll at least scare them, or maybe some of whatever killed them will kill the occupants of the city, and then we can finally get in there. So what they did was, and this is just terrible, I can't believe you do something like this. It's not very Christian-like. They would take them, put the dead bodies on catapults, or there's a fancier name for them. They're called a trebuchet. You can Google that if you like. And they would slingshot them dead bodies inside the city walls, and the rest is history. So that's how it kind of made its way to the Black Sea, and then over time, they think that maybe the survivors of the city fled and made their way to, Sicily or Italy or something. Or it was the trade ships. They're not 100% sure. But anyway, 1347 is when it hits land in Messina, which is in Sicily, and then it makes its way in waves year after year up through the rest of Europe. Okay? Everybody got that? Golden Horde. What the heck is a golden horde? I guess that's the name for the Khan, the Genghis Khan and the Genghis Khan, I guess. But the golden horde, you know how they name like football teams and stuff like that? They name, like, they have a mascot and stuff. I never done seen me a team that said, like, Republic High School Golden Horde. Nobody ever had that as a mascot. I guess they probably don't want to do that, because in order to be a mascot, you probably got to like massacre a bunch of people. But I tell you what, that probably would scare a lot of the opponents. They probably, because what the Mongols used to do is when they would show up, they would basically give you one chance to surrender. And if you didn't, and they breached your walls, they'd kill everybody. So I guess nobody wants to be named a Golden Horde because they kill all their teams they play. There ain't nobody left to play after that. Something like that. I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. All right. So, yeah, see, this is what I was talking about right here. Hey, look at that. Yeah, that's the city wall right there, and they's defending themselves against the Mongols, and this looks like this is the contraption that I was talking about, the trebuchet. Anyway, that's how it got there. All right, everybody got that? Oh yeah, and then remember what I said? It spread. Spread to the rest of Europe in waves. Right? See that? All right, all that green. That's oh wait a minute. 1347 is in orange right here. The green is 1348, and the yellow, that's 1349, and then they got 1350, and then 1350. What's this gray area? Oh, look at that. Right there. What's that say? Relatives were unaffected. How do they know their relatives lived there? Wait, what? Oh, it says relatively unaffected. Okay, so what's this geographic region right here? This is like Eastern Europe. We're going to call it Poland. All right? And why do you think this region right here, look at, see that? It's all gray. Why do you think it's unaffected? Well, I'll tell you why. What's that you say? You don't know? Well, that's okay, because I'm going to tell you. So everything okay. You just sit back and relax and let Donnie Lee take care of everything. This place right here, in part of Eastern Europe, is not very inhabited. It's pretty isolated, desolate, if you will, and sparsely populated. So that's why. Not a lot of rats, because rats only live where people live, because people are filthy. Filthy. With a capital filth. All right. Next one. Let's go from there. Okay. So, like I said, the people living in cities and stuff, named too many cities in Poland at that time because it was too sparsely populated. But in other parts of Europe where there were cities, that's where they got hit the worst. So what do we say? What was the question I asked earlier? I said, how many people in Europe died because of the bubonic plague? Do you remember? Or are you playing on your cell phone? Yeah, you probably are. But I did say 1/3, but in the cities it was much worse. In the urban areas it was up to 50%. All right, 50% of the inhabitants of the cities would die. So that's pretty high. And why is that? Because there was dreadful sanitation. And what is sanitation? That's how you clean up your filth and your, it's like public health policies and trash collection and sewage. Well, they didn't have any sanitation because they didn't have any of that. Basically, what they would do with their trash is they'd throw it out in the middle of the street. Sounds like a good idea to me, I guess. I don't know about that, but anyway, so then like they'd all have balconies, and so they could have access to the sea, not the sea, the street. The balconies had to be close, right? And so everybody had an overhang. So like if you were on the first story, your balcony was here. See what I'm saying? And then the second story, you would have a bit of an overhang, right? So that when you throw all your, what they do it. You know what they call at night when you go to the bath? Because they didn't have no indoor plumbing, y'all. So you know what they do? They put it in a pan, right? You gotta go to the bathroom or something like that. You know what they call that stuff that's in there? Well, I know what you call it, but they're a little more sophisticated. I guess they call it night soil. Night soil. They take that pan of night soil and they throw it out in the street because they don't want to hit the people on the balcony below. They was built with an overhang, and then if there was a third story, he'd have another overhang. And what about the fella on the other side of the street? Well, they got that same balcony going. All right, so the top would almost touch. They could reach over and give each other a high five or something, but that means there's little room for the sun to get through. So it was real dark and wet and nasty, stinky smelling. All right. And in fact, you see all these people throwing their night soil and all these people are yelling. You know that there's an old custom. Y'all probably don't know this because you watch too much MTV. But there's this custom where if you is a feller and you know, are sweet on a girl and you was, you know, accompanying her or escorting her from one place to the next, it is customary for the man to stand on the outside of the woman, meaning he's closest to the street and she would be closest to the buildings. You know why? Because of that stuff. Because everybody's throwing out that night soil. So if it was going to hit somebody, it would hit the man, not the woman. That's being gentlemanly. You know what I'm saying? All right. Anyway, that's just a little free story for you. Look at this. Hey, they all going for a walk. I guess that guy got hit with some diseased night soil because he's dead now. He's a skeleton. So I guess that's, you know, that's the price you have to pay if you want a girlfriend these days. You don't have to get the bubonic plague. Well, anyway, the other thing that we need to talk about was hygiene. And there was a terrible loss of hygiene. And we're going to talk about that later, but it has a lot to do with religion, if you're curious. Like, why were the people in the Middle Ages so filthy? Well, it was because of religion. What do you mean? How are you going to blame that on Christianity? People not. Did it say in the Bible, thou shalt not bathe? Well, no. But during the Middle Ages, there was this obsession with being pure. Well, if you want to be pure, don't you think you ought to take a bath? Because what they say, cleanliness is next to godliness. Well, that might be true, but the point is, they didn't want no, because back in Rome, they had them public baths, and everybody walked around naked, all right? And then they thought that that was sinful in the Middle Ages, and so it's a sin if you reveal your, you know, your private parts to somebody, so they got to keep them things covered up. And so they didn't go around bathing. I don't know. That's just the way it was. And so they was filthy, nasty, B.O. You know, that's what they say, the reason why they invented perfume, the French, because they all stunk so doggone bad, because none of them take a bath except for like once, well, probably about twice a year. That's filthy. Can you imagine that? Y'all don't bathe twice in a year? I mean, I take my bath every Saturday without fail. I don't care if I haven't had, you know, sweat or worked out too hard. Every Saturday, Donnie Lee takes his bath, just like, you can set your clock to that. You set your watch to that. All right, so anyway, and here's something funny. These people was so covered with bugs and stuff that the fleas that was infecting them with the bubonic plague didn't even bother them, you know? I mean, when I get bit by fleas, I at least know it, but they was so bit up from other stuff that the bug that was biting them, they didn't even know about it because they're just used to it because they're so filthy. All right, moving on. What do we got? Yeah, we already talked about this. Yep. 1347, 1351, 25 to 30 million people perished. Yep, that's a lot of people. That's a big number, y'all. Okay, we all covered this. Let's move on. What else here? Oh, the last time that the bubonic plague, it hit intermittently, but because people done a better job of quarantine, meaning locking up all the people who were sick and separating them out and letting them die. They did a better job of that. Plus, I think their sanitation laws practices got a little bit better. And then plus, people kind of build up immunities over time. So that every time the bubonic plague would strike, it would do less and less damage. But they believe the last time that there was a major outbreak was 1721 in Marseille, France. Right? Okay. And here's a priest anointing the sick, and this here is a picture of a mass grave. Ain't that nice? Look at this funny here. This guy with the funny little bird mask on his face. I wonder why he's doing that. Well, because they got this theory back then, because they wasn't too bright. They thought that diseases might have been caused by what they call corrupted air. Well, what the heck is corrupted air? Well, it's air that stinks, silly. Like, You know what I'm talking about in the streets where they throw all their night soil in the bedpans and there's dead animals and garbage and all that nastiness in the middle of the street. That stuff stinks because it's decomposing. Well, that decomposed, whatever, rotting, creates a terrible stench. Now, what they thought that stench was actual disease, and that you had to cover up your nose so that you wouldn't get sick. So this doctor here is trying to prevent himself from breathing in that diseased air. So, I mean, it all stands to make, that stands to reason, because my daddy's daddy, my grandpa, they come and visit sometimes, and I mean, this is back when I was a little boy, but we didn't have a, ceiling fan, to suck all the air out the bathroom. So when Grandpa would go in the bathroom and he would, do what he had to do and come out, you go in there and there was a couple of times I thought my sister died because she passed out right on the floor and she had turned all kinds of different colors of yellow and green because she was breathing in Grandpa's corrupted air. So I don't necessarily blame these people for thinking so. Anyway, so here's some sick patients. They got those the buboes all over them, and they had all kinds of crazy, silly ideas. And this fella here, he's throwing something up in the air, trying to scare away the disease or something. That's what they call them. People are superstitious. So the upper clergy, the Pope and the bishops and the cardinals, they were like absent. They didn't care nothing about it. They were only concerned about themselves and their own power. But these priests and nuns and monks and stuff down at the bottom, they actually did a very good job. So that's a notable thing that we need to that's a takeaway, that the clergy, the lower clergy, sacrificed their lives. Okay, because what we're going to see is that families used to flee and abandon their loved ones often. Okay. And there was no one there. Even the doctors wouldn't come and treat them. And so the only people that would come would be the clergy, and they would anoint them. There's what the Catholics call a sacrament, the anointing of the sick, or the benediction. And then they would give that, administer that. And so they would give them some sort of comfort in their last moments. And as a result of that, a lot of the priests and monks and nuns and brothers, a lot of them perished because they were the ones on the front lines working with the people. All right. So here's a little, poem or something that says, "Oh Father, why have you abandoned me? Mother, where have you gone?" So this little child is left to die, and his parents are so freaked out about the disease they don't want to catch it that they abandon. So that's a really strong impulse to mother I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you got like a really strong bond with your child. Okay, and for you to, when your child's sick, I got 2 babies, and when they sick, I want to take care of her, right? And so it's real hard for me to imagine as a parent, like if my little babies was sick, that I would abandon them. So that everything was upside down is what I'm trying to say. This disease caused people to lose their minds, all right? If they're just going to kind of disavow their children and abandon them. So there's all kinds of other things that happen, all right? Economically, there's actually some good things that happen, because for the poor people, the peasants, they actually filled a lot of the shortages that existed in the cities, because so many people had died. The guilds, the skilled craftsmen, the manufacturers needed new employees, and so this drew people from the countryside, and so they saw their salaries rise and their living conditions. If they remained on their feudal manor, the feudal lords had to give them a better deal. So they actually have what we call leverage, all right, because they could have always left, and since they didn't leave, it was incumbent upon the feudal lord to make the conditions better so that they would stay. And so as a result of that, feudalism in Western Europe goes away. Well, what about Eastern Europe? Well, remember we was looking at Poland? They didn't have no bubonic plague. So that must mean that the feudalism that existed in and around Poland didn't disappear. That's right. We'll get to that much later in the year. Anyway, let's go on. So in England, it was the I don't know, the poor people were making so much money that the landlords got Parliament to pass laws saying that they can't leave their land, and that they was putting limits on what people could make, caps on salaries, and this made the peasants really mad, and they eventually revolted. And so there's a revolt in both France, and that's called the Jacquerie, because of the way that they're being treated because of taxation. And then it was the English, or the peasants' revolt in England. All right, and that was the worst one of the century, and that was, I believe, 1381 English peasants' revolt. Okay, so anyway, that was another. That's a social effect or a political, actually, when the people revolt. Okay, so the government was mistreating. They were not being looked after, and they were being made to pay heavy taxes. And so as a result of that, we get the revolts. Okay, and this is an underlying theme that revolt is only one step away, that it's only one famine away. And so the kings need to pay attention to that and make sure that, you know, they do a better job of caring for their citizenry, or else they gonna get killed. Like this, castles and manors were sacked, destroyed. Many nobles, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, who had ordered the collection of the tax, were murdered. Holy smokes! All right, so what else we got here? There's a couple more things here. Oh, so what we see, let's go back to the social effects. Some people like freaked out and thought that this was end of times, and so they thought that this was God's smiting mankind, and that they needed to repent, and so they all became super pious and religious. And there was even, in fact, one group that went around and basically inflicted pain and suffering on themselves to atone for the sins of mankind. And them people were called the Flagellants, not the Flatulents. That was my grandpa. He was flatulent. But not these people. They're Flagellants. And when they would show up, they'd be screaming and hollering and talking about how the end is near and you better repent. And so a lot of the cities where these guys would show up, the government would run them off because they didn't want to cause people, cause panic and freak people out. So you have one group that becomes super pious and religious, and others just turn, say, I'm going to die soon, so I might as well die with a smile on my face. Well, that's not these people here in this fire. They're not dying with a smile on their face, because the people got so upset and freaked out about the bubonic plague that they turned to the old scapegoat, and that was the Jews, and blamed them for poisoning the city wells. And so there was major pogroms, state-sponsored terror. The government was fully in support of it, and the biggest and worst one was in a city called Strasbourg, Holy Roman Empire, but today it's called modern, that's Germany, Strasbourg. Probably 60,000 of them were rounded up and murdered. And as a result, many Jews fled, and they settled in Russia until there was a pogrom there, I think in the 1880s, that made many of them flee and come to the United States. So anyway, literature and art of the time period was very morbid. Okay, morbid means having to do with death, and so there was more of an obsession with death, and these paintings, The Triumph of Death, depict that. And so a lot of things going on with skeletons and grim reapers trying to take mankind down to the river Styx with them. Okay, so it's all pretty bad. All right, so I'm pretty sure we got through everything. We're going to wrap things up. 35-minute lesson on the bubonic plague. All right, like I said, make sure you subscribe to Dr. Lob-EZ. This is Donnie Lee signing off. Next installment will be over the 100 Years' War. All right, see y'all later.